we talk about something called the players and layers methodology. There are 5 people you need to meet. And if you're offering something, offering to solve a problem, at least at first, that you can help with at a very low price tag, you might not need to know the cabinet secretary or the CIO or even the base commander. Helpful to know if you're looking to grow to that stage, who the big cheese is in your food chain. But for sure, you do need to know the contracting officer. It's helpful to know the small business specialist. Small
Mhm.
business specialist is not going to lead you to the micro purchase. Small business specialist, if you've done your research, can help you fill in the gaps in your research and your knowledge when you're looking to find out who should you be doing business with, who should you be talking to. So of the 5 players and layers, stakeholders probably not as important for micro purchase, but helpful if you're growing. Small business specialists can be your advocate and help you fine tune your navigation and your call planning when you're building relationships. End user for sure. Your end user has a lot to say about, hey, I want this thing. Contracting person, could you make this happen, please? That's a short jump. So, contracting and end user and small business specialist, all really, really helpful. Probably don't need to know the stakeholder. Helpful to know the industry player. Who else are they doing business with? Who are they buying from right now that either you are going to have to complement or be compatible with, or might feel uncomfortable that you're nipping at their heels? So you got to slide under there and go, oh, this other thing that insert name of big prime that they don't do, we can take care of you. That thing that they've left unfinished, we've got you. That happens all the time.
So, by the way, while we're reading the comments, there's about 60 people watching so far, 17 likes. Make sure you give us a thumbs up if you like the content. I'm going to go through and continue as Judy's
Yeah.
talking,
Sure. And
filtering
Aunt
questions that we
Paul
have.
has something that they're asking about. Let's see here. What was that now? Um, what is micro purchase exactly? All right, Louis. Yes, let's start back at the beginning. A very good place to start. Federal buyers, a warranted federal contracting officer, someone with buying authority, may purchase goods or services worth up to the value of $10,000. They can pay you on a credit card, which is typically how it happens. They can make the purchase when they're following the rules with virtually no competition, no small business set asides. The Buy American Act does not apply. And you got to know the rules, which is why I have a class that goes through that. And I'm not going to go and read the federal acquisition regulations to you. It's not quite the Wild West for just handing out contracts hand over fist. They're supposed to look for local suppliers. So if you're close to a federal buying installation, an agency, a base, a fort, a camp, great, because they have encouragement to award contracts to local suppliers. So that's an advantage for you. So go local is a big deal. It's very helpful. Brian, do I mention getting paid for lunch and learns in my book? I think the particular lunch and learn I got paid for, I didn't tell that story in my book. I will tell you the story of how I won it. I was just
Become better.
finishing, I was at the government procurement conference. So I guess it would have been 2, 3 years ago now. And I had finished the presentation I was giving. I was tired. I was sitting down at a lunch table, and somebody from the Department of Homeland Security in the small business office and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, I know Citizenship and Immigration Services, one of the I words. We sat down and we were chatting, and he was talking, and I was asking him about, I was testing my theories about whether or not contracting staff want to talk to vendors or they don't. And he said, that's really funny. One of the things that I have a mandate to do is to encourage the contracting staff to have better relationships with vendors. And I said, well, this was in April. I said, I could help you with that. I'd love to put together a lunch and learn on that. And this is April. Well, I said, when should I follow up? He said, oh, you should follow up in June. So I sent him an email in April. We followed up in June, and then silence, silence, more silence. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Came to almost the end of the year. It was September. Hey, would you like to do the thing? Oh, we'd like to do the thing, but new fiscal year. Let's talk after September. More silence, more emails. Finally, we get to October. I get finally hear back from. He said, "Yeah, I think we'd like to do this thing 2 weeks before Christmas." I said, "We can do this." So lots of email follow up, lots of patience. I didn't hear from him for many, many months,
Mhm.
but then finally said yes. And now we got to the agreement. And then the contracting officer writes to me and says, "I'd like to know if we can get a discount." I'm going, "Discount?" So I'm calling my other friend who's a contracting officer. She said, "Oh, they ask that because they have to ask that." I said, "Oh, okay, fine." I said, "Well, I'm not going to discount one, but if your office buys four, or maybe it's $3,500. If your office buys a set of four, then I will prorate your price back down to $3,500 each." So I got $3,500 for the one that I gave, because they never came back and asked for any more of them in that
Right.
fiscal year. So they had to ask for a discount, which was interesting. And this is the best part, 48 hours after I gave the webinar and submitted my invoice, I had a payment for $3,500 from the Department of Homeland Security. I wept. It was the fastest I got paid by almost anybody. So that was my little story about doing business in a lunch and learn with the Department of Homeland Security. I hope that helps a little. If you like the story, if you think that this something sounds like something you could do, if that's helpful, put a thumbs up in the chat. Let us know whether the story is helpful to you.
By the way, Sylvia says, I received my first 3 micro purchase contracts with the Federal Reserve Board of Governors doing training for their facilities managers.
Excellent.
Good job. Good
Excellent.
story, Sylvia.
That's impressive, Sylvia.
By the way, glad you're
Congratulations.
back. I know she was out for a little bit. Hey, there's only 26 likes, 68 people watching. Give us a thumbs up so we can keep sharing, keep discussing,
Yeah.
keep bringing content, keep answering questions and
Colin, thank you
whatnot.
for the plug. Absolutely. So talk a little bit about what else you might like to offer. Oh, Aunt Paul wanted to know, are these micro purchases location specific? Absolutely. You're delivering a thing to a place. You're conducting a training in a location. Yes, they are very specific. These are ways to create something exquisite and special to solve a very specific problem for somebody you can help. It's personal. It's like, imagine, I love the concept of design thinking. Have you heard of design thinking, Eric?
No, I've never heard of that.
Oh, it's so cool. And this is a principle that is super valuable for everybody in federal contracting and everybody who ever had to sell anything to anyone. The concept comes from Stanford University, and it's well worth looking up, called design thinking.
Okay.
I want you to tell me, Eric, you and me are both going to think for a minute and about what present would you love someone to give you, you've always wanted, and maybe you've never really talked about very much. And if somebody gave you this present, whether it was a physical thing or an experience or a gift, you'd go, "Ah, how did you know?" Think about one of those things. What would that thing be? What would the present be that you would love to get? Now, if you're listening, I want you to drop your present you would love to get. Drop that in the chat. Okay. Because we're going to play a little game here for a minute. Okay. So drop your perfect present, describe it in the chat. All right. So Eric, tell me, what would your perfect, if Maria were to give you a present?
I want to go to Monaco.
Trip to Monaco.
Trip to Monaco.
All expense paid, including casino money, right?
Yep, that's right.
Trip to Monaco.
I want to go, but I want to go when they're racing, when they're doing the car races.
So Formula One. You want to spend the
Uh,
Formula One. You want to see the Formula One
I want to see
competition.
the race in Monaco.
I completely get that. I know somebody who knows the Crown Prince of Monaco.
Ooh, so I'm
Who knew?
close. I'm 2 degrees
You're
separation.
you're 2 degrees of separation from the. Yeah. Now, how did you know? You're 2 degrees of separation from the Crown Prince of Monaco, just because you asked the question.
You asked that question, and I have it on it's actually on my bucket list of things.
There you go. So now, if you were to
Which, by the way, happens to be in my background bucket list.
There you go. So if you were to give me a trip to Monaco to visit with the Crown Prince and see the drivers and do the walkthrough and do the pit tour, I would go, I know someone who would love that, but I would probably give it away to somebody else. For me,
Uh-huh.
That trip would be a curated eco tour with scientists to the Antarctic. I
Ooh.
would love that. If I gave that to you, you go,
Ooh.
seriously? There's
Yeah,
no
no, I
gambling,
wouldn't
no
take
girls,
that.
and no
Maria
cars.
might
Why
Maria
would you
might like
send
that
me?
though. That sounds like a Maria trip.
There you go.
Maria probably
So
would go with you on that one.
And so the reason why, there we go, all expense paid to Lisbon, Portugal, alpaca socks. There you see. And so if X Schultz gave alpaca socks to Keeson, Keeson would go, thanks, I guess. So the whole point of design thinking is to know your client, know your customer well enough that by the time you deliver the thing, they go, oh, how did you know? Do you know your client well enough to design an experience, a product, a report, an assessment that can make their eyes light up and go, oh, yes. Yes, like Meg Ryan, yes, and Harry Met Sally, that kind of yes, for those who are old enough to remember. So to be able to know your client well enough, micro purchase is your way of giving them the how did you know experience in microcosm. I go back to one of my favorite writers and poets, Dr. Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. People will never forget how you made them feel.
Yep.
And when you give someone that gift, that perfectly designed, perfectly written report, perfectly designed product or training or prototype, you make them feel heard and seen and cared for and understood. And that comes from conversations that you have with them. The conversation you have when you ask them, what's going on with you now? If you could do this acquisition differently, or construct that stairwell differently, or have them put in that electrical box differently, what would you have wanted to see? How would you have wanted to be treated? What experience would you have want to have had with a contractor who really took care of you? And then listen, really listen. Now, this doesn't happen in a big hurry. It might take you 3 or 4 or 5. I can't tell you. I could go back and look it up how many conversations I had with my wonderful client at Citizenship and Immigration Services. It took a lot. And I only have that one contract with Citizenship and Immigration Services because ultimately they weren't necessarily the client that I was meant to serve forever. Any federal agency where I don't have more business, it's only because I didn't invest the time and continue to woo them and get to know them, because it's not like you turn on the tap and it gushes. You have
Mhm.
to build the relationship every time.